Hello, everyone. Welcome into Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. This is episode 26, recorded on May 18th, 2022. My name is Nicholas Hill, live here as always from Chattanooga, Tennessee, of the United States. And joining me, as always, from Americana in the state of Sao Paulo, down in Brazil, or up in Brazil if you are Australian. It's Gustavo Tomazeli. Gus, how are you doing?
Freezing cold. It's very cold in Brazil. It's the coldest Brazil has ever been since 1990. So it's
Really?
very cold. Yeah.
So what is
Currently in Brazil, what?
what is the temperature down there?
52 degrees, and it's gonna get in the mid 40s in the middle of the night. So it's get to
That's
low as 46.
That's nothing. Because the coldest I felt in the state of Tennessee is like 5 degrees or something like that. So it's um, so definitely if that's the coldest it ever gets where you are, that's pretty insane. That must mean you never see any snow.
No, there's no snow here. I mean, it's so crazy though. Like the local authorities had to send a warning about the freezing temperatures. They had to set a shelters. But for me, it was like I understand why they're doing this because for the reality here in Brazil, it's very cold. But since I lived in Tennessee for like almost 7 years, it's pretty basic temperature. This could be considered like a very cold fall day today, but it's kind of cold. I'm all Tennessee
Hmm.
today,
Yeah.
uh, cel- celebrating the number one team in the country, Go Baseball Vols.
And the SEC champions. I will say just on the weather front here, it's the exact opposite. We are having at 90s, mid 90-degree temperatures in the middle of May, which is pretty rare. We don't normally see temperatures this high this early. So that's pretty worrisome in terms of how hot it's going to be later on. Now, thankfully or unthankfully, depending on how I feel on the day, I work overnight, so it's not like I'm up when the temperature is extremely high. But it's already getting to summer here. We skipped from winter straight to summer here in East Tennessee.
In Brazil as well, we went from like a month ago hot to cold, but I it was like a front cold, so I guess it's gonna get a little better probably in a week or so. But let's dive into some American topics. We have so many topics. I mean, I missed having our pod last week, but we had a crazy week with a lot of work a lot of work for both of us. But in the American topics, I mean, the National Football League released their 2022-2023 schedule, and there were some interesting games. I'll tell you that. And week one, for me, it's already some very interesting games.
Right. So let's take a dive into week one here, and there's some just general things I definitely want to point out in terms of the overall schedule, especially when it comes to like the Titans and whatnot. And obviously, there's too many games for us to dive into in one time in here, but just some general thoughts. Obviously, the open night game, the Bills at the Rams. Um, the Rams have been to Super Bowl champions. They pretty much are bringing most, if not everything, back from their championship team. The Buffalo Bills, though, that they're a team that if they hadn't gotten a bad coin toss, they could have easily met the Rams last year in the Super Bowl. Because I don't know if they lose to the Bengals in the AFC title game like the Chiefs do. I mean, granted, that defense last year was not very good for Buffalo, and that's what ultimately cost them. But if Buffalo has an average defense this year, just an average, not a bad defense, but an average defense, I think they very well have a chance at making a run to the Super Bowl. And they're certainly going to get a chance to prove themselves here week one on the road in LA. Although I would imagine, like in many other LA games, there's going to be a lot of Bills fans in attendance in SoFi Stadium. Definitely a bucket list item for anyone. That stadium is a spaceship. It looks so beautiful. But that's going to be an incredible game. I'm excited to see Josh Allen back on the field because you know he's going to be hungry as so hungry this year after what happened to his team last year. I mean, he played the game of his life and still came up short.
And I feel like it's a statement game for the Bills because, as you pointed out, they were a coin toss away from being in the Super Bowl. So, or at least play in the AFC Championship game. So I think this game can be, and again, this will be the banner lifting moment for the Rams, even though they probably not going to have the majority of the crowd. I think it's going to be like 50-50, maybe 60-40, but still, it's going to be a special game for LA, after they got the title.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, definitely they'll be raising the banners. I'm sure it'll be a rocking atmosphere for that opening night game. Um, and also, too, and this is tangential to the game itself, but we're going to be launching into a new era of NFL TV announcing as well. Because instead of Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth calling this game, it's going to be Mike Tirico on Chris Collinsworth because Al Michaels is going to be in the Amazon booth now calling Thursday Night Football. So we're certainly going to be getting used to a lot of different combinations than what we had previously. But that's the point, tangential to the topic. But obviously, that's that opening Thursday game. But obviously, most of the rest of the games are on Sunday. And in terms of the games here, obviously, the Sunday night game, Tampa Bay at Dallas. Yeah, these two teams met last year in the first week, and that was an amazing opening night game. Dak Prescott was incredible in that game, but came up just short on a Tom Brady-led game-winning drive. And for the Cowboys, it feels like they're in a really interesting spot because they have the talent to make a deep playoff run. They got the most talent probably in the NFC East. I mean, the Eagles, they've gotten better this offseason, but are they still as good as the Cowboys? That remains to be seen. But does anyone truly believe in the Dallas Cowboys' ability to win the NFC East? On the other side, for the Buccaneers, I don't think anyone should touch the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this year in the NFC South. But uh, are they going to have enough to overcome some of the other teams in their conference to make that Super Bowl run? Because, is this going to be the last run of Tom Brady? Because it looked like last year was, and for 99 days, we were led to believe it was, or 43 days, excuse me. We were led to believe that was it for Tom Brady, but he's going to come back from retirement. It's just going to be interesting to see what Brady brings here because, did he lose any steam from his retirement? Was he still working out during his retirement? I think that's a lot of questions that we're going to see answered in that game versus Dallas.
Yeah, last year's Buccaneers and Cowboys was, one of the best games of the season. It came down for a field goal, and that game was in Raymond James Stadium. Now it's going to be at AT&T Stadium in Metro Dallas. So, but the Cowboys, they had a lot of departures. Cedric Wilson, Amari Cooper left. We are not sure if Dak Prescott is going to be the quarterback that's going to carry the franchise to success. So there's going to be a lot of answers in this game. For me, the best game of this week is Broncos at Seahawks on Monday Night Football. The NFL is a master on promoting their own league. What is the better way to start a season? How about putting one of the most iconic quarterbacks of one franchise and left to another franchise and putting them battling at the stadium of the franchise the iconic quarterback left. Denver Broncos playing versus Seahawks in Seattle is going to be a game everybody going to watch because what is going to be the crowd reaction when Russell Wilson takes on the field. It's going to be weird seeing Russell Wilson in white and orange, play versus, you know, uh, 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 playing versus Seattle, and
Pete
especially
Carroll, yeah.
versus, versus Pete Carroll. Both of them have grievances with each other.
Oh, absolutely. And what's going to make that game even weirder? Obviously, it's going to be a Monday Night Football game on ABC. Joe Buck and Troy Aikman making their debut there instead of being on Fox. That's going to be weird enough on its own. But it's even going to be weirder to see Russell Wilson in orange and white in that game. Um, and it feels like these games where quarterbacks return to their old homes are always like the best, the classics. When I think about Peyton Manning going back to Indianapolis with the Broncos, you had last year Tom Brady going back to New England to play the Patriots. I mean, these games are always fascinating. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not high on the Seahawks. I don't believe in Drew Lock as a long-term prospect in terms of quarterback start. And to be honest, outside of their receiving core, I'm not too high on the rest of the roster. Some of their draft decisions didn't make any sense, like taking Kenneth Walker in the second round. Like, you already have Rashad Penny. I don't know why you would take a running back there in the second round if you're the Seahawks. But yeah, but the Broncos to me should be a far better team, and I think they're going to walk in there and get a win. I don't think that game's going to be particularly close. Albeit, I think a lot like when LeBron went back to Cleveland and the Heat took care of business in their initial game back versus the Cavaliers. In terms of the rest of the schedule, one game I have my eye on, outside of my own team with the Titans, the Chiefs at Cardinals, because I feel like the quarterback who has the most pressure on him this year is going to be Kyler Murray, because I think there's a lot of question marks over whether or not he has a long-term future, because I feel like he's going to be where Baker Mayfield was last year. And if you think about how things fell apart for Baker Mayfield and now where he's at, he's not a guaranteed NFL starter anymore. I feel like if Kyler Murray has a bad year this year, he could end up in that same situation because he's on his last year of his rookie contract. And the Cardinals, I've talked about this for years now, especially with Cliff Kingsbury. They have a tendency to start off well, but they always fall apart at the end of the year. And of course, last year they got ran out of the stadium in their playoff game. And obviously this is going to be week one, so I wouldn't be shocked if they came out and won this game because it is week one. But I don't trust the Cardinals after when it gets cold. And I'll be very curious if they can come out and at least start hot again so they can put themselves in a position to maybe rewrite that narrative that they fall apart every single year.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I feel like Kyler Murray is going to be a lot of pressure, and he's trying, and he's betting on himself because when the season was over, right after they got blown out on the playoff game at home, he was already know he was under scrutiny. He know that he needs to prove himself. I know he was a lot of drama on the off season, so and then he start on the season on the road at home versus the one of the favorites to win the AFC. It's going to be a heavy matchup. For another game for me before you talk about your dear Titans, of course, my Jets, play at home versus Ravens, but it's a rebuilding year again. I mean, the Ravens going to be favorites,
Mm-hmm.
but the Packers at Vikings, I think is going to mean a lot because Aaron Rodgers needs to make a statement that they're favorite again. So play on the road versus their probably only contender in the NFC North is going to be a battle.
Yeah, I mean, if the Vikings want to have any shot win that division, they need to win in week one. I think they absolutely need to have that game if they want to win. Of course, Kirk Cousins, he has this stigma of not being able to perform in prime time, has a horrible record in big games. Kind of very similar to Matthew Stafford before he went to the Rams. If you think about it, I think Kirk Cousins is what Matthew Stafford used to be. Because I think Cousins has a ton of talent. But how many people truly believe in him as a championship contending quarterback? I don't think there's that many. So that's going to be interesting. And I'll say this in terms of pressure on quarterbacks, definitely Giants Titans. I mean, Daniel Jones, I mean, he's a dead man walking, in my opinion, in New York. Unless he just has a miracle turnaround. I don't think he's going to be the quarterback beyond this year. May not make it through this season. And then the Titans, Ryan Tannehill now has got Malik Willis on the bench. And a lot of people are not happy with some of his comments that he's made in this offseason. And of course, going back to the way he collapsed against the Bengals. So that game is going to be very interesting because the Titans, I will say this, they have a brutal stretch in November. In November, they have a stretch where they have to play in order. They have to play the Chiefs, the Broncos, the Packers, and the Bengals. And then they got to play the Eagles after that. It's a brutal 5-game stretch where they're playing against 4 elite quarterbacks and they have to play against their old receiver in A.J. Brown at the end. So if they want to win the division, if they want to position themselves to maybe make a run in the AFC playoffs, they're going to have to win games like this one against the Giants that are perceived to be a little bit easier, although that's a misnomer because no game in the NFL is easy. But if they come out and stumble out the gates against the Giants, I'm not going to be too confident in their ability, especially since when you look at the Colts, they're going to get to play the Texans and the Jaguars in the first 2 weeks. So the Colts get about as easy as a start, in my opinion, as you possibly can have. Although the last time we saw the Indianapolis Colts, they lost on the road to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So that'll be interesting to see how that all plays out.
Yeah, yeah. For me, that's an interesting, week one, and I feel like there's probably more matchups. Like for example, week two, there's already you know the two games on Monday Night Football, which is interesting, and I guess it's going to be broadcast by different networks because they're going to overlap.
Yeah, the Bills Titans is going to be on ESPN, and then the Vikings Eagles will be on ABC. And it's weird because they don't have to do that week one, but I guess they're experimenting with a couple other things. There's also a couple of international games. I know they have 3 games in England, I believe one in Germany this year, maybe one in Mexico. So it's going to be an exciting season, and I don't want to spend too much time on just going through the schedule week by week, but it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. So the international game is gonna be the Vikings versus Minnesota Vikings versus New Orleans Saints, October 2nd in London, England, on the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Then again on the Tottenham Stadium on October 9, the New York Giants play the Green Bay Packers. Then on Wembley Stadium, the historical Wembley Stadium, the Twin Towers, on October 30th, Devin Broncos faces the Jacksonville Jaguars. Then on November 13th, in Allianz Arena, the home of the Bayern Munich, Seattle Seahawks versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then in Estadio Azteca, the historical Estadio Azteca in Mexico City, the San Francisco 49ers play versus Arizona Cardinals on November 21st. So that's going to be the international games. Hopefully, the Mexico City game, it's, let's say,
It happens this time.
it happens this time because, the debacle that happened a couple of years ago, it makes the NFL question this. They give you another chance, but I still hopeful one day the NFL comes to Brazil at least for a preseason games. I feel like Brazil has a competence to host an NFL games. There's so many stadiums that can host. In Sao Paulo itself, I can see Palmeiras, Corinthians, and São Paulo stadium having I think Palmeiras is the best one because they already have like a artificial turf, so they can easily be adaptable for like an NFL field.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
I'm glad
In the
that
NFL,
the more.
they would want Maracana, I feel like. That's what the first stadium they would inquire about would be Maracana. Just because being in Rio and with all the landmarks, and that's what Americans are most familiar with.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a good point. That's a good point. I mean, even though the majority of the NFL fans in Brazil are located in São Paulo, I think the landmark the NFL would like to play, it would be in Rio de Janeiro. I think that would be the best scenario. The host of the 2016 Olympics, the host of the 2014 World Cup final. That's a fair point. The only problem is the grass itself. They don't have a reliable grass. They're already going to put the winter grass, so it will be a little tricky, but it's doable. I mean, I'm just being like I say a home crowd. If the NFL comes to Sao Paulo, I will definitely be there, no matter what team.
I think one thing that's also interesting is the fact that the NFL has a full slate of games on Christmas Day. 1 p.m. Packers, Dolphins, 4:30 Broncos, Rams, which I think will be a phenomenal game. 8:20 Buccaneers and Cardinals. They're going to just straight up go. I mean, they're basically taking the NBA's thunder from them, and we all know the NFL is going to crush them in ratings. So, I mean, if you're the NBA, I wonder how you respond to that, because the NBA Christmas has always been your holiday if you're the NBA, in terms of being able to promote yourself, have big marquee matchups. But the NFL's coming on in, and they're basically treating it like Thanksgiving 2.0.
Do you think the NBA might take that personal and also schedule games on Thanksgiving, because all NBA has kind of cleared the way in doing Thanksgiving or even the Super Bowl? I don't know, but
I mean, the
the
NBA
problem
doesn't have
is,
the capital that the NFL does. The NFL can do whatever it wants. People are going to watch. The NBA just doesn't have the numbers that the NFL does.
no, I agree. The NFL just, they are expanding and they are not, they are going more territorial, going international games, scheduling on Christmas is just show they know how powerful they are today, and they know they can expand their businesses because, again, you know, eh, eh, the NFL is the king of American sports leagues, today. There's undeniable. So they know on Christmas they're gonna get a lot of ratings, especially on a Sunday.
Oh yeah, I mean absolutely, and of course most of their games will be on that Saturday, Christmas Eve. Like the Titans host the Texans, and there'll be a night game, an 8:15 game between the Raiders and the Steelers. Whereas normally when I normally watch It's a Wonderful Life, so that'll be uh, that certainly will be a contest for me personally. But I'll watch. I'll be watching Raiders Steelers more. Although I don't think the Steelers are going to be very good. The Raiders, I think, will be in a playoff contest by them. But yeah, I think let's do a transition into the NBA from there. We'll definitely have a lot of time to talk about NFL in the offseason, but we're in the NBA playoffs. We're now in the conference finals. Miami and Boston are in the Eastern Conference Finals, and the Warriors and the Mavericks are in the Western Conference Finals. Western Conference Finals, game one's about to start here in about 20-ish minutes. Game one of Celtics Heat was last night. The Celtics got off to a great start. They were up by 10. Jason Tatum had 21 in the first half, but the Heat were just too good in the second half. They got on fire, and Jimmy Butler had 41, leading them to an 11-point victory. And of course, we didn't really get that chance to really wrap up the second round. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I guess where I want to start is the Phoenix Suns. The Suns just utterly fell apart. And I think Chris Paul has cemented his legacy as one of the biggest chokers in NBA playoff history. I mean, just did not show up in that game seven. Devin Booker, for as well, really didn't show up as well, but at least he's still young. He's got a lot of time, but it feels like for Chris Paul, it's over. I don't think he's going to get as close as he could have gotten this year with a number one seed. Had home court advantage, and Luka Doncic just came in there and basically pulled his pants down, and just it's like the bully who wedges someone, and the entire class laughs at them, like in an old cartoon show or something. Um, because
I mean, it it kind of I kind of compare Chris Paul to Charles Barkley, both really talented, really good NBA players, but they never got the team or the roster to be a championship team.
So I disagree, because the Suns absolutely have a championship roster, in my opinion. Now, granted, I think there was some dissension at the end, like DeAndre Ayton apparently was just like he didn't want to go in the game by the end, so he's probably going to get traded now, which is a shame because I think he's a very talented player, but something clearly is going on within that organization. Because last year that was a very together unit; they were playing super hard, and it really should have won the title. If it wasn't for some heroics by Giannis there in Game 5, they would have been up 3-2, and it wouldn't have been the other way around. And then Giannis just, killed them in Game 6 with that 50 piece. But yeah, just a very disappointing performance if you're a Suns fan, and I think they're gonna have to go for some restructuring because um, I don't think this current roster is gonna get it done.
I agree. It was a roster meant for last season. They just couldn't beat Milwaukee, but it's now Chris Paul either have to find another two or another good player, or I don't know if they're going to be viable for a championship team. But just show how Luka Doncic only keeps getting better and better. And I think this Western Conference Finals is so interesting because it's a new contender versus the old dynasty. The Dallas Mavericks and the Golden State Warriors. And a couple of years ago, I guess like you can say 8 years ago was the opposite. Dallas was riding high in the West, and then the Golden State Warriors took over. Now it's the opposite.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because like, at the end of Game 7, Luka was he was hugging Dirk Nowitzki, and Luka is kind of now our generation's Dirk Nowitzki, which is ironic because they're both European. Um, but Luka is kind of similar in terms of the way he's built, the way he's able to shoot the ball. I think the debate is Luka now a top 5 player in the league? I mean, what players would you have above him? I would have Giannis above him. I would still have LeBron above him. Probably KD. Besides that, I'm not sure. Who else I would have right now in the league? I mean, obviously Jimmy Butler's really, really good, but I think Luka's better than him. I think John Morant at times this year showed flashes of being a potential top 5 player, but Luka is. I mean, if you look at that Mavericks roster, and they're decent, but Luka is absolutely carrying that team right now to this Western Conference Finals appearance, and it's super impressive because remember he's only 23 years old. I mean, this is probably the most impressive young player we've seen in the playoffs, maybe honestly since LeBron. That's what it kind of reminds me of, and I feel like we're gonna see we're gonna see the Mavericks run into that same issue that those early LeBron Cavs teams had in terms of just not having enough to support their star. And I think the Warriors just have way too much. I mean, they still got most of their old core, plus you got Jordan Poole. Klay Thompson is still a killer. We saw what he did in Game 6 to Memphis. I mean, Steph Curry can still shoot the lights out. Um, Oddly, I think the one player that's regressed a ton is Draymond Green, especially on offense, because he didn't used to be scared of shooting the ball, but now he's terrified to shoot the ball, which is really strange. But he still provides at least a defensive presence on that team. So I've got Warriors
No, yeah,
5 or 6.
and and I feel like also the Western Conference playoffs, especially the second round, it just show how the regular season is not as relevant because the number one and number two teams were eliminated by the
Right.
number four and number three team.
I'll say
So
this: Memphis would have had a chance if John Morant doesn't get hurt. If he doesn't go down with injury,
yeah,
Memphis would have had a chance. They just because they played valiantly without him. Because they blew him out in Game 5. They challenged them in Game 6. They challenged them in Game 4. So it's just they need a job to get over that hump. So I think they need to get another veteran. I think they need to get a veteran player. If they can get a veteran player along with the core they have down there, um, especially with another year of playoff experience, I think the Grizzlies are going to be ready to make that run all the way to the finals.
Did be a good player to join them? Chris Paul.
Well, they already have John
But
Morant, so they don't need another point guard.
so
I,
who do you think will be the
Ooh, that's a good one. I feel like they need a big man. I feel like they need a veteran big man.
maybe Jimmy Butler?
He's not leaving Miami. I mean, there's someone there's like an Andre Drummond maybe like that could be an option. They could get DeAndre Ayton. I mean, clearly he doesn't be in Phoenix anymore. That'd be a good addition for them. But he's still young. But I mean, he has a finals appearance under his belt, so that they need someone like that. So that's I'll be curious to see what they do because they're really, really close. They need to be building towards that title window. Um, I think someone else that whose legacy is completely tarnished now, if it wasn't already, is James Harden. James Harden took 2 shots in Game 6 against the Heat in the entire second half. Did nothing. Was out there doing aerobics, doing jogging, doing what I was doing before the show. Um, he's just. I mean, he's a great regular season player, but he's not a Hall of Famer. He should not be in the Hall of Fame because he does not
No,
show up in the playoffs ever.
no, I definitely agree. I feel like James Harden. A lot of people are gonna make the case for him to be in the Hall of Fame because of his performance at the regular season. But again, it doesn't matter if you can't show in the playoffs, and he consistently has not shown the playoffs in Oklahoma, Houston, in Brooklyn, in Philly. He had opportunity and opportunity to show he was a clutch player, and he proved to be not a clutch player.
Yeah. And also Doc Rivers needs to retire. He doesn't get it done in the playoffs either. I know he has a championship, but more often than not, his teams don't blow it. And really, if it wasn't for Joel Embiid coming back from injury, they would have gotten swept in this series. Um, but I will
But
say
now the
this.
question is,
Go ahead.
but now the question for Doc Rivers was: is he this really good coaching, or is he just got lucky to find a really veteran, hungry roster in Boston 2008 who got it done, and then after that he just couldn't, in Los Angeles, in Philly, he just couldn't get it done.
Yeah, that group up in Boston definitely had a unique chemistry to them that you just can't replicate if you're not good enough. And I just don't think he's been good enough to replicate that. So
And
it's
he also and you have to question because he had a really good roster, but only got one championship out of that really incredible roster in Boston.
yeah. I mean, in a way, he's almost like the Andy Reid of the NBA. Apparently, really good regular season coach that, outside of one time, comes up short in the postseason. Think about Andy Reid. Needed perhaps the greatest quarterback we've ever seen in terms of pure talent, and Patrick Mahomes, and all this stuff to go his way for him to win a Super Bowl. And think about it, even in that, the Chiefs fell behind 24 to the Texans. It fell behind double digits to the Titans, double digits to the 49ers. Any one of those games should have been the end for them. But because they had Patrick Mahomes, they came back and won. So,
Yeah.
it's pretty interesting. He has the title. You can't take that away from him. Uh, so the last team that lost, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say about the Philly loss. It's probably. Do you think Philly now experiment trust the process can be over now, or do you think it
Yeah,
was already over?
it was already over. I mean, they're in a win now mode. Um, and I'll say this, I don't think the process completely failed. I mean, they went from being complete trash to being a good team. They just didn't go all the way. And sometimes you don't go all the way. I think Ben Simmons probably kneecapped the process because Joel Embiid has absolutely proven that part of the process was an absolute success. But and also I'll say this on Ben Simmons too. He doesn't need to be clowning the Sixers, man. You couldn't be bothered to show up for your own team in the playoffs. Like he was
Yeah,
like, so it's just he needs to shut up because um that just makes you look like a clown. But anyway, that's quickly on the last team that lost, the the Bucks. That was an amazing series, Bucks Celtics. Um, and to me, this one was just Giannis needs some help. His supporting cast let him down in this series. The Celtics were just the better team, And even though Giannis was the best player on the court by far, um, he had no help. Like he literally had like half of the team's points in Game 6, had over half the team's points in Game 7, just had no help. You can't win a championship by yourself in the NBA, no matter how good you are.
Yeah, that's a issue. In Milwaukee was last year's Brooklyn. In a lot of favoritism. They carried to Game 7, but they just couldn't get it done. And by the end of the game, Boston was the better team, and you know, but I don't think the championship window for the Bucks is already shut. I don't.
No,
I mean, of course, they got a lot of players injured, but I think they're still a contender next year.
absolutely. They need to restructure. They need to get him some help. They really need to get him some help in terms of in terms of really being able to truly compete for championships. And also Mike Budenholzer, I really like him as a coach. But before last year, he's been known as kind of a playoff choker too. And I wonder if he is going to be like the next Doc Rivers, where he can't also win a title. So that is something that you really have to consider. So moving in, and also too in that series, shout out to Grant Williams. Really is starting to come to his own as an NBA player. He had 27 points in Game 7, just absolutely dominated. In that Game 7 with 7 3-pointers, tied the most for all time in a Game 7. And it's just crazy because he really wasn't a 3-point shooter when we watched him at Tennessee. Like that, he was down in the paint banging, but he has completely transformed his game. Really not recognizable at all as the same player. And it's just, as a UT alum, it's so proud to see a guy that I've watched in person like 20 times, perform on the biggest stage like that. It's just awesome. And I hope he continues. I want him to be able to perform in the NBA for a long time to come. Like it's just awesome, and it's
I
awesome to
mean,
see all the ball players. Go ahead.
I could feel he was going to be a really good basketball player in the NBA. I mean, I had the chance to talk to him during, I think, was 2 years ago in the 2020 off season, and the way he was talking, the way he was, you know, showing maturity, he was just ready for success, and the way he's delivering for Boston is just show he got on the right team. He was lucky also to be on the right team for the way he plays.
Absolutely. So we talked about the Warriors Mavericks. I think you're also on the Warriors, right? Because I'm on the Warriors in like 5 or 6. Um,
I don't know. I don't know. I think it's gonna go down to Game 7, but I think the Warriors' experience is gonna trump. But I think it's gonna go to 7 games. Give me the Warriors, but in 7.
yeah. So that game has just started, by the way. The Mavericks and the Warriors really just tipped off a minute ago in San Francisco. And I will say this too: the Warriors' home crowd in San Francisco sucks. I miss when they were in Oracle Arena in Oakland. So I have the Warriors in 5 or 6. I don't think it's going to go down to 7, but I might be underestimating the Mavericks again. I feel like this always happens to me when I try to predict the playoffs, where there's this one team I constantly under value, and then they go on a giant run. So you know, I have not picked Dallas in any series up to this point, and I'm not going to now. So I'm picking with the Warriors. Over in the Eastern Conference Finals between the Celtics and the Heat, of course, the Heat are already up 1-0. I think the Celtics are going to take Game 2 tomorrow night. I feel like the Celtics are a better team, but this one I think is going to go 7. I think these two teams are very evenly matched. Of course, Eric Spoelstra, low key at this point, I think is the best coach in the NBA. Um, he's proven that he was not just carried by the big three. He can get any type of roster to a deep playoff run. Jimmy Butler is a great leader to have on your team. He could will your team. But the Celtics team and the way they move the ball is just absolutely gorgeous. I think moving Brad Stevens to the general manager's office and getting a new coach was absolutely the right decision. Jason Tatum is becoming a young Mamba almost. He reminds me of a young Kobe. Marcus Smart plays very hard, although I believe he's injured. So we'll see how that affects the rest of the series. I have to talk about Grant Williams. Al Horford has been playing really well in the playoffs at the age of 35. I give me the Celtics. I like the Celtics in 7, and I think we're going to get a Celtics Warriors finals, which I feel like the NBA, out of any of the possible combinations, that would be the one they want the most. Of course, we might get a Mavericks Heat final, which, if you think about, that's happened twice. 2006 and 2011, we got Mavericks Heat. So that'd be insane if that matchup happens for a third time, because that would mean every single time the Mavericks have made the finals, it would be against the same team. The 3 completely different iterations of that team.
Yeah, I mean, but it'll be and also be the third time the Mavericks go to a NBA Finals with their best player being from Europe. You have
Right.
Dirk Nowitzki both times, and now Luka Doncic. It would be interesting to play versus a Miami team led by a really good veteran player, Jimmy Butler, and you had in 2006 you had Shaquille O'Neal, and then in 2011 was LeBron James.
Yeah, that would be pretty nuts. But I am going with Warriors Celtics as my NBA Finals pick. Even though the Heat won last night, I think the Celtics are going to come back and win the series.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be Celtics in 6. So I think gonna be Celtics in 6. So my prediction also I think will be like yours, Warriors and Celtics.
So we'll definitely see how that goes. We're still early on in the series. But now in the other playoffs, the Stanley Cup playoffs, they're just now in the second round. Right now, we have the New York Rangers and the Carolina Hurricanes. Rangers are leading game 1 of that series 1-0. Last night, we had the first 2 second-round games. I know the Colorado Avalanche defeated the St. Louis Blues 5-4 or 4-3 in overtime in game 1. Additionally, the Lightning went on the road and won 4-1 in game 1 over the Florida Panthers. Just absolutely dominated. And tonight, the last series we have is the Oilers and the Flames. Just some really interesting storylines. Obviously, my Predators just got absolutely smoked. They were the only team that got swept. First time in franchise history that happened. Not too surprised, to be honest with you. I mean, when USA Saros went down, it just there really was no chance. Connor Ingram gave all he had in game 2, but that was really the only time they had any chance of winning a game in that series. The Avalanche are just way too strong.
Eh,
Go ahead.
No, sorry, go ahead. But I was gonna say, what a crowd on Game 7 in Madison Square Garden for the Rangers and Pittsburgh.
I mean, what a game that was in
Yeah,
overtime. The Pittsburgh Penguins blew a 3-1 lead. I mean, just it's a terrible way to end your season, because they were the underdogs in that series anyway. But to have them at the brink like that and to let that series get away is just heartbreaking, absolutely brutal for Pittsburgh. Also, the Toronto Maple Leafs. My goodness, what is it going to take for the Toronto Maple Leafs to win a playoff series? You have all the talent in the world, all the talent that you possibly could want. You have the fan base. You're in the biggest city in Canada, but you still can't get it done. You still haven't won a playoff series since 2004. Have not won a cup since 1967. I mean, it's just mind-boggling.
a city that's already tasted the championship in basketball.
Yeah, it's just insane. I like they have to be the most cursed team in American sports, or not in America technically, but in the 4 major North American sporting leagues, they have to be the most cursed team. That's just unbelievable. Um, I really don't know what else they could get. I'm very curious, because we're gonna have Dylan back on here towards the end of the playoffs. Um, I'm very curious to see what else they need, because that's just insane. Uh,
Yeah,
in terms of other series, when you look at this, Well, when you look at the playoffs this round, I think the one that stands out to me, I mean, you have two interstate slash province matchups. Obviously, you got the Lightning and the Panthers. An inter Florida playoff series, which is insane when it comes to Florida and the hockey. But then on the opposite end, you have the Edmonton Oilers and the Calgary Flames, which both of those teams are in Alberta, which Providence, which is just a Canadian state. Um, so it's insane that half the playoff series are literally taking
And
place all within a state or province.
and not only they're battling for Alberta, they're battling to be the Canadian representative to finally bring down the curse of American only teams in the Stanley Cup final.
Oh, absolutely. And I think they're going to end up playing Colorado in the Western Conference Finals. I mean, St. Louis, they're definitely playing pretty well right now, but I think Colorado's just going to be too much for them. Um, I'll say it's in the Eastern Conference. I think the Lightning and the Rangers are going to win those series, setting up that series, which would be an awesome series. But the Lightning, you can tell they just have the playoff experience right now. They've made it to was it 2 or 3 straight finals. They've won a cup, or they've actually won the last 2 cups, and they're just really really good. And you
So
can
so my predictions will be for the Stanley Cup. The East will be Tampa and New York, and in the West will be Colorado and give me Edmonton.
yeah, I like Edmonton too. Connor McDavid definitely was able to help will his team pass the Los Angeles Kings, which the Kings you have to give them. They had a great effort in that series, just came up a little bit short in Edmonton. But that series is going to be awesome. I'm very curious to watch Wayne Gretzky throughout that series because Wayne Gretzky obviously was an Oiler, picked the Calgary to win that series, which is very interesting. So very interesting to watch his reactions on TNT throughout the postseason. But obviously we're gonna have Dylan on way later. Just a bit of an update there with 9:40 left in the third period. We have the Rangers still 1-0 Rangers in Raleigh, North Carolina. But moving on, just a little bit of baseball talk here. I know, Gus, you want to talk about the Reds' terrible start. I mean, the Reds. I mean, they literally lost the game the other day, and they didn't give up a hit.
Yeah,
How do you
it was versus the Pittsburgh Pirates. I mean, they lost.
who really suck as much?
Yeah, they both suck. The fan base is enraged. The team. Now they're getting back on track. They won 6 out of the last 10 games. But at one point they only I think at one point they were like 3-22. So I know they got a little bit better recently, but they're still the worst team in baseball. A little bit above the Nationals, which is crazy since 3 years ago they were the champions and now they're in the rebuilding mode. Your
Yeah.
Braves has a slow start. I know there are a lot of players is still getting back. Ronald Acuna, and of course, missing Freddie Freeman.
Yeah, right. And then they've had a weird week in Milwaukee too. Like literally, they lost power in their hotel. Some people didn't even have running water on the team up in Milwaukee this week. They did come back and win last night at least, so it's 1-1. Well, they did lose earlier this afternoon. I did see that score because I was asleep for that game, but so they lost that series. But I'm not too, as I've said consistently, especially after last year. As long as you can get to the All-Star break at 500, I think they can get it together and make a playoff push. Because they do have a lot of talent, especially in the offensive end.
Yeah, yeah. The Braves lost today on extra innings on a walk off home run by Keston Ihura.
Yeah. So hopefully they'll be able to. Hopefully, but they need to start putting together some series wins. And back on the Reds, shout out to Hunter Green. He was the starting pitcher for that no hitter, and he used to pitch for the Chattanooga Lookouts. So definitely good to see a former Lookouts prospect go out and do really really well.
Yeah, and how about the Yankees? I did not expect them to be as good as they are right now. They are the best team in baseball. They only lost. They're the only team who is still in the single digit loss. They only lost 9 games. They're also the team with the most wins, 27. They won 8 out of the last 10 games. Of course, their current series is versus the Baltimore Orioles, and they're up by one, 3-2, bottom of the eight. But still, though, there. But of course, we're still in May, so as you said, we can start analyzing better by All Star break. But it's just interesting to see there are some teams pulling ahead, and who's going to be I think we already can see who's going to be the contenders to be in the playoffs and who's going to be in the tankings, because we can safe to say that the Reds going to be tanking, Nationals and Pirates, and maybe the Cubs are going to be tanking in the National League, and maybe in the American League, the Tigers, Kansas City Royals, and the Baltimore Orioles are going to tank. And how about the Oakland Athletics? They're totally giving up on their city.
Yeah.
There's more fans on their AAA team than in the Coliseum. And I think yesterday the Minnesota radio uh, broadcasters had to leave their booth because there were possums in their booth.
That is just, I mean, it's just an absolute shame. I mean, like, I don't know what the solution is there, because I don't love the fact that teams can just, kind of hold a city at gunpoint to demand that they build a new stadium with tax dollars. But, um, I mean, if the A's leave Oakland, then I mean, you're losing so much economic activity to that city. Like, it's mind-boggling that you could not keep any of them. You let the Warriors go across the bay, you let the Raiders go to Vegas, and the A's. Like, honestly, I'd go to Vegas too, because the Vegas is just it's a booming market. It's a more attractive city. You're going to get free agents that want to go and live in Vegas, instead of living in Oakland. And I feel horrible, because I know A's fans are very passionate. I used to live with one. My college roommate was an A's fan, or is an A's fan. Um, it's just it's really unfortunate. And
Yeah, but I think unfortunately the city of Oakland is in decline. Not
yeah,
only in the sports, but also economically, even in violence. It's just shame that Oakland, it maybe in the late '80s, early '90s, looks like a very prosperous city. They even attract sports teams like the Raiders left LA to go to Oakland.
right.
Uh, the Golden State Warriors went there. The A's were very successful in during that period as well, also winning the World Series versus their across the bay rivals, the San Francisco Giants. But now they're currently declining.
Yeah, because I don't know if you ever saw the last season of Last Chance U. That was at Laney College in Oakland. But it didn't necessarily paint that city in the greatest of lights. Now, it did make some parts of it look kind of cool, but I mean, it didn't sugarcoat the issues within Oakland. And I've never been to Oakland. I definitely want to go out to the Bay at some point, and in the next little while. But yeah, it's just, I hate to see a city lose all their teams like that, because at least like when like Seattle lost the Supersonics, they still got the Seahawks and the Mariners. But like for Oakland, you know they're gonna have to readjust, because now they're gonna have to go root for San Francisco, which there is that rivalry. There's an infinite jealousy of sorts of San Francisco, of being the city across the bay with all the landmarks, and with the Golden Gate and everything, and of course where all the tech companies are down just south of San Francisco, and it's a mess for them. So
Well,
it's
yeah, but
yeah,
think about it. When a city loses one franchise in one sport, it's already hard. If the A's leave, then in a span of maybe in a decade, you lose three big sports franchises, NFL, NBA, and MLB, all gone.
yeah. I mean, they're really ceasing to be their own city. It feels like they're just now a satellite of San Francisco instead of being the big city that it was. So, it's- which I mean, San Jose feels bigger. I mean, San Jose will literally still have the Sharks.
And the earthquakes in
Yeah,
MLS.
yeah. So it's, I mean, they're just gonna be the redheaded stepchild of the Bay. It's yeah, that's rough. Hopefully they figure out something, but it just I think the political situation in Oakland is not going to be conducive because it's one of the few cities in America where the public will is not going to override the political will to build a stadium with tax dollars.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But I know you want to talk about some soccer here. The Seattle Sounders bringing in MLS to the top of North America finally, overcoming Mexico.
What a win on Lumen Field. 69,000 passionate fans showed up. 2-0 versus Pumas. Big game. And congratulations to the Seattle Sounders. I wish it was New York City FC, but I'm still just happy to see finally a team from the United States of America be representative in the FIFA Club World Cup, and they can, and if they win that tournament, they can say they're the world champions, legitimately. But you know, it's still a big shot, but I think they already make a MLS is making huge steps, and this one it was big. I just wish the sports media in America recognized that title. I know soccer is still in the top of the second tier sport. It'll be with softball and maybe other volleyball, but I just wish the sports media in America, recognize that they finally are gonna play in the global stage. They finally have a big chance to prove that U.S. soccer is not only for retirement players, but they can legitimately win titles. And this one was a legit big title.
Mm-hmm. I mean, so right, what I really want to see is a matchup between Seattle and Palmeiras.
Oh my God! If you're gonna see an increase of Seattle fans by a lot because every time Palmeiras play in the FIFA Club World Champs, everybody cheers for the other team because the joke has to keep it alive. But that will be a historical game. I will definitely watch that game.
Absolutely, I would have to find a way to watch that game. Um, if that does happen, or if they get to play like a Liverpool or like a Manchester City or something, that would be insane.
Or Liverpool or Real Madrid, because
Yeah,
it's the Champions League final. So it's gonna be either like one or the other.
yeah. Which of course, obviously, they probably wouldn't play like the A team of the either one of those teams, but still, even when they're like C teams come over and play MLS All Stars, typically, the European team wins. So that's going to be just a very interesting deal. Um, kind of a local story here too. The One Knox debut.
Yeah, the Knoxville, our beloved city of Knoxville, debut their first, say, true professional. I mean, because we had Knoxville Force, but was semi-professional. Was in the fourth division in the National Premier Soccer League, but now they are in the USL 2, which is the third tier in the divisions, and their debut did not go as expected in the Austin East football stadium. They lost to Asheville 2-1, but they got a really good win last night versus the Tri Cities, through 2-1. They got a good win. 1-0, actually, 1-0 in Knoxville Catholic High School Stadium, and so they got their first ever win yesterday on playing at home. So shout out to One Knoxville Soccer Club debuting in the world of soccer. Hopefully one day they can maybe play versus Real Bronco. What a game! That'll be a dream game for me. with the one they have. I know it's a long shot. It will be a probably in like 30 years, but still.
Yeah, I was looking at their schedule. I know one of the teams they're going to be playing against one of the Chattanooga Red Wolves, B teams, the Dalton Red Wolves. So that'll be an interesting game at Knox Catholic High. Speaking of the Red Wolves, they actually kind of a non-sports story, but kind of they're going to build like a whole like entertainment district around the Red Wolf Stadium in East Ridge here. So that's going to be really interesting to see. They're really doing a lot of construction. Put like a Blaze Pizza out there. Um, so the wars between the Chattanooga FC and Chattanooga Red Wolves is really heating up here in Chattanooga, and hopefully we can get like more regular derbies here because I think that would be absolutely phenomenal for the city um, to have that legit rivalry between the East Ridge Red Wolves and the Chattanooga FC. Of course, I call them East Ridge Red Wolves, in jest.
Yeah, because for a long time, Chattanooga FC was the predominant soccer team. They're very beloved. I follow them for a lot of years. I cover their game versus Atlanta United versus Real Betis. Cover a couple of games they play in the National Premier Soccer League. So I know how massive how really big it feels. But you know, I really hope this rivalry gets bigger because I love inner city rivalries.
Absolutely. So, kind of in our final American topic, we have some NCAA rule changes. Um, I think the most important one is an off the field one with recruiting, but there's going to be no more signing caps. So before this year, you can only sign up to 25 players in any given recruiting class, which made it super hard to rebuild and like exceptionally hard to rebuild. But now you're going to be able to sign as many players as you need to fill your full cap of 85. So if you need to sign 40 players in a class, you can. So for FBS, it's still 85. For FCS, it's still 63. That's huge, especially for Tennessee, because like we've been struggling for a while to get back to 85. It feels like, and it's really going to help us to be able to sign as many players as we absolutely need at one time. Hey, I guess I can't hear you.
But also there's some advocacy, especially with big time head coaches, for some adjustments on the NIL rules. But I still feel like it's just crybabies.
Oh yeah. Um, and I don't know how much the NCAA really could do because it feels like the Supreme Court ruling from last year is going to constrain how much they can actually do. Because at the end of the day, it's just capitalism, right? Like players should be able to profit off their likeness as the way they fit. If Nico Amiavella believe he's worth $8 million and someone's willing to pay him $8 million, he should get paid $8 million.
Yeah, they finally get what they deserve. What the free market, it's just coaches are not getting their ways anymore. It's just now, before it was a lot of coach personality and persuasion to get recruits, but now you have to put the free market. So of course, players want to go where they feel more valuable. Not only before it was they feel valuable in the coach scheme, but now they feel valuable in the pockets.
Oh, absolutely. And, I think one program that's going to suffer a ton from this is Clemson because I think it's clear Dabo Swinney is not willing to make the adjustments necessary to adjust to the new world of college football. He hasn't been using the transfer portal as well as he should be. He's been complaining for years about this whole NIL business. Um, he's like, we got to do it the right way. Well, if you're going to continue to do it the right way, Clemson's going to go back to the irrelevancy it was before 10 years ago.
Do you know who reminds me of? Uh, Coach K was at first a little bit skeptical and resistant with the one and done, but he saw that if he would embrace one and done, he was gone.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, then and it definitely gave him like a second wind in his later years to have those one and dones. Um, but he didn't win that many titles with the one and dones either. So I'll be very curious to see what Duke does from now on with their new coach John Shire. Additionally, some other big rule changes. So now, for conference championships, you no longer have to have divisions to have a championship game. You can have the two teams with the highest conference win percentage. So in the Pac-12 already announced is getting rid of its South and North divisions. We're probably going to see other conferences follow suit. I think this is a good rule change because we've seen for a while now that often divisions are unbalanced. They're not really fair. So I really do think that having the two top teams will make for far better games on Championship Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, it's also I think the upcoming changes in the SEC also push for that because with Oklahoma and Texas joining in a couple of years, it's probably I don't know if it's gonna be two divisions or how the SEC is gonna balance this out.
Yeah, I don't think that. I mean, they're not going to have to, in my opinion, now. So I think now what you just do is basically you can create scheduling pods where, like, okay, these teams get to play these teams every single year, and then you rotate the other teams. But the schedule should be fair enough to where you have two teams at the top with the highest winning percentage.
Of course, it loses a little charm because with that, the chances of Tennessee or Florida per se to go to Atlanta playing the SEC championship, I think goes down because we know in the last 5 years the SEC West has been better than the SEC East. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
let's say this year the SEC West had Texas A&M, Alabama. In the past, LSU. Like in 2020, it should have been Alabama LSU in 2019 2020 in the SEC championships. But with this divisions, but I think it's fair. I think it's a good point. I think only in the Big 12 was the two better teams, right? It's already like
Yeah,
that.
the Big 12 is already like that, but they only have 10 teams. So before, if you had 12 or more teams, you had to have divisions.
Oh,
Yeah, but if you had less than 12 teams, then you could do just a conference title game with the top two teams. And the Big 12, more often than not, has had the best conference title games. I mean, Baylor, Oklahoma State last year, amazing conference title game that came down right to the last second. I think about, what was it, a couple years ago, it was like Oklahoma and Baylor was an amazing game. They usually have some of the best title games over there in the Big 12.
yeah, definitely. But of course, Big 10, Big 12 is known to be a very aggressive conference, but not very successful outside of that.
Oh, absolutely. I think the Big 10, we could see some Michigan, Ohio States now in the Big 10 title game, which would be incredible. Think about what if we saw Alabama Auburn in the SEC championship game? Georgia Florida in the SEC championship game. There's just the possibilities are pretty wild. Or what if we saw Texas Oklahoma in Atlanta? That
Wow.
that I think every Southerner would hate that.
No, imagine this. Texas, Oklahoma making to the Big 12 final, let's say this year. And maybe in 3 years, they make it again in the SEC.
Yeah, that'd be so. I mean, it's like if Texas, Missouri made it. Like because right now it's theoretically possible to get a Missouri Texas A&M SEC title game. That would so not feel like an SEC game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but it's a pretty wild, definitely a pretty wild situation. Yeah, but there's two of the big ones I really wanted to talk about in terms. Oh yeah, also in addition to those things, there's now an appeals process for targeting calls. So basically, a player would still have to sit out if they get called for targeting in the second half, but in the week between games, it could like appeal that, and the NCAA could revoke that. So I think that's a good call. And also to the NCAA now, it's going to have a weekly report on teams that potentially are faking injuries. If a team believes that another team is faking injuries to slow down their progress, they could submit a report and then potentially levy punishments. Which I just want a penalty during the game or something, because like who cares about a fine? I mean, I don't think that's going to stop Lane Kiffin from faking injuries or Purdue from faking injuries. If you just have a fine.
I know you're gonna hate me for saying this, but I like this, strategy. It's like the Brazilians complaining the Argentinians teams in Libertadores make too much fouls or getting provocative. It's just part of the game. Maybe Lane Kiffin is watching a lot of South American soccer because this is traditional catimba. It's just it's just use the you use the game in your benefit. You trick is like a legal trickery that I feel like it should not be punished, in my opinion.
I mean, it's so hard to prove that I understand addressing it in this way, but I don't know. There's got to be something because like a team should not be punished because they decide to run a different strategy. Like, and this is effectively cheating and handicapping, in my opinion. Um, and I guess I feel like this because it's happening to my team, and I think it hurt us severely in those two games. And I guess you could say it's up to our team to be able to overcome the gamemanship of that team because is it illegal for like LeBron to blow on Lance Stevenson on the Pacers back in the Eastern Conference Finals in 2014 to try to distract him or whatever, or like the bad boy Pistons to kind of get all over Michael Jordan? But I think there has to be a penalty because at a certain point it becomes obvious. Like to me, what I would do is if a player goes down, they can't come back in for the rest of the series. That's what I would do. So it's not necessarily a penalty, but it's you can't use that player for a certain amount of time.
I Do you know what I would do to stop that? You get additional if you have an injury i- in the next play. You have additional time for the you know to get the ball, like to start your play. Like you have a 40-second to do the play, right?
Right.
The So if you have an injury, you have like a minute or something.
Yeah, but like for a Josh Heupel team, I mean, they're not going to use a minute. So I mean, that would only hurt if you're like trying to drain the clock at the end.
Because in soccer, when this happens, the other team get punished because you have the stoppage time even more. Like, but it's football is hard.
Yeah, I'm just it's really hard to think of a lot of solutions on this particular issue. Um, and maybe one could be, for each player that gets injured, you lose a timeout, and then if you have no more timeouts, you lose 5 yards.
But then but then you also this will also make you more violent to get injuries because you like take a player out and then you take a timeout out also. So
Yeah,
you
take one away from the other team.
so then you'll be incentivizing injuries. I know it's a dark thing, but you'll be a. It's hard. I know. It's a one. Again, it's one of the part of the games that the more you try to fix it, the worse it gets. It's just you have to. It's just one of the situations you gotta get mad, but there's no solutions, in my opinion. You just hope is in your team to be favored at.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason too they need to figure out something with this because games are getting extremely long as well with the fake injuries and the fast tempo. Of course, one way they can fix that is going to NFL style timing in terms of like not stopping for first downs and just keeping the clock moving. I think they got to find a way to keep the clock moving more often than not. So, yeah, so those are most of the ones. I definitely wanted to touch on one. There's also the Kenny Pickett rule. Or best remember against Wake Forest where he fake slid and then ran it for a touchdown. So that's illegal now. So if a player does that, they're down at that spot. They fake slid,
Mm, okay.
which it makes sense. Like it's a safety thing. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it
but anyway,
makes sense.
that's all the American topics. So now let's head down to Brazil. Week 5 of Libertadores.
Yeah, Corinthians had a really crucial game on the road in La Bombonera in Argentina. What does it there was an invasion of Brazilians. In my social media, there were a ton of people that went down to Buenos Aires to watch this game, Corinthians and Boca Juniors. Corinthians, it scored first with Duqueiroz, but then Benedetto tied the game. But it was a good result. Corinthians still controls their own destiny. They play next Thursday at home versus Always Ready from Bolivia. There'll be a no-brainer to win. If they only need a tie to advance. So I think Corinthians, with this result, it's for me is already on the in the playoffs of Libertadores. Palmeiras again another win, even though they start the game with the reserves, with the additional of some starting players like Rafael Veiga and Danilo, which was called by Tite for some friendly games. Palmeiras 1-0, 5 games, 5 wins, scored 21 goals, only suffered 2 goals. Palmeiras is already the best team in Libertadores. Uh, probably is going to remain like that. The only competition is Flamingo, but they're going to play at home again to close up the group stage versus Deportivo Táchira. So I think Palmeiras is going to get the undefeated, the 6 wins in 6 games in the group stage. Another Brazilian team that got a really good, interesting result was Atlético Paranaense, 2-0 at home versus Libertad. They controlled their own destiny as well and play at home versus Caracas. So I think another Brazilian is going to get advanced. Unfortunately, the Sao Paulo countryside representative, Red Bull Bragantino, it doesn't look that promising. They lost at home versus Estudiantes 1-0, but they got lucky because Vélez Sarsfield uh, beat Nacional of Uruguay on the road 3-2. So they also control their own destiny. They only need to win, but they play on the road versus Nacional, so a little bit harder. And oh my God, America Mineiro, they were up by 2 in the first half, but they're now tied with Tolima. And with this result, they're gonna get eliminated in the group stage. It's sad because they were the Cinderella story. They're playing the first Libertadores ever. They went to the pre-Libertadores, the first and the second games before the group stage, both advancing on penalties, but it doesn't look good, the situation. And I understand, they're the small budget team in Libertadores, so I don't think they're gonna get advanced. And finally, Flamingo. What a month has been the month of May in Flamingo. Oh my God! Imagine this. Let's compare the situations. It's like if Jimmy Johnson, former legendary Cowboys coach, spread out rumors that he wants to go back to coaching. He wants to go back to Dallas, and he provokes Mike McCarthy to go back. It's literally like that, but it's worst because Jorge Jesus was very successful in Flamengo in 2019, 2020. He won Libertadores, Brazilian National Championship, the state tournament. So he was very successful. Well, he left to Benfica. Then he got fired in Benfica. So earlier this month, he went down to Brazil to Carnival. And of course, all the press was on hand asking, "Are you coming back? Are you coming back?" It was like, "No, no." But he gave an informal interview, wasn't recorded, but he had a conversation with a big time journalist, and he said that he wanted to go back. He gave a deadline of May 20th of Flamengo to sign him, even though Flamengo has a head coach, Paulo Souza, who was also from Portugal. He's doing really well, I think, even though in the Brazilian National Championship, Flamengo is flirting with the relegation zone, only uh, in goal differentials, not in the. But in Libertadores, good win, 2-0, already 3-0, already qualified for the playoffs. And by the end of the game, all the team gather with the coach, with the prayer. I think to send a message that Paulo Souza is our coach. We liked him, but it was a chaos week for Flamingo with because the fans they miss their coach because they remind of the good times.
Right.
It's like
I mean, I don't see why these teams let these outside coaches because this is not the first time you've told me about a situation like this in Brazilian soccer. It seems like in America there's a much better hold by organizations because obviously fan bases are going to do what they're going to do. We've seen that with the Vols fan base, but it seems like down there outside forces can really get inside and just cause chaos in these organizations.
again, it's the difference between sports teams being run by owners and sports teams being run by committees and politics. That's the big difference. And
Yeah,
speaking of
it's insane.
and speaking of owners, the guy of the week is Botafogo new owner John Textor. He is an American, actually. He's from Kirksville, Missouri. He is the CEO of FaceBank, but he was also former executive chairman for Football TV. He's a co-owner of Crystal Palace and Botafogo. And after a Botafogo win this weekend, he gave a really, really emotional interview. He is in English though, so I think you'll be able to understand. But look at the reaction of Don Texter after Botafogo win on Sunday.
We don't have this anywhere in the world that I've been. I mean, they say that the Premier League in England's the best league in the world. They don't love their clubs this way. It's so effusive and it's incredible. I mean, it just fills me up with joy every time I watch them. And everybody feels it. It's not just me. We need to show this to the world. That's why I'm here, I think. I think that's why.
Are they treating you well?
I think this is why I'm here. To bring this to the world.
Emotion.
Yeah. It's hard to sit here. These people have wanted something for so long. And they work so hard and they deserve this and they love this club. And I love that they've trusted me with it. It's amazing.
That is incredible. It's amazing. But the thing that definitely here is we got to show this to the world. And Brazil is one of those markets that can absolutely go international.
And look at him with a flag.
That reminds me a lot of like Steve Ballmer with the Clippers, with that type of energy. But Brazil, I think, could absolutely compete with England, with Spain, and with Germany and those leagues in terms of having their product on TV. Because think about it, it's really easy for us to see an EPL game, for us to watch La Liga on ESPN Plus, to watch Bundesliga on Fox. There has to be room somewhere for the Brazilian league. Like, why not ESPN Plus pick up a couple of those games? Make it easier for Americans to watch Brazilian league games because it's clear that the atmosphere is something that would appeal to a lot of sports fans. Because we know how passionate the general American sports fan knows how passionate Brazilians are about soccer just from the World Cup. But I think they could really get into it. And it's going to take more John Texters to really be able to have those connections back in the U.S. to really bring this to the United States. I think there's an absolute appetite for it. Because everything about America and just American viewing habits in general now are so niche. You think about all the streaming services, all the sports that you can watch, all the shows, all the music you can listen to. It's no longer about getting a mass audience. It's about getting a big enough audience that could care specifically about your sport. And I think Brazilian soccer could absolutely get enough people in America to consistently watch to be profitable in getting their sport to the U.S.
No, and also it all depends on the expansion of uh, the professionalizing way. The SAF, the SA for SA for soccer. That's why John Texter now is the co-owner of Botafogo. It's because of that law passed last year that allowed a soccer team to become a company, to open their IPO. That's why there's John Textor, Ronaldo, the famous Ronaldo, the that played for Brazil. He leads ownership group that now owns Cruzeiro. Vasco, it has very advanced talks to be purchased by 777 Partners, another American group. So that's what I hope for SAPs, for more John Texters. But it's going to be a lot of opposition. There's still a lot of old ways in Brazilian soccer. This last 2 weeks there was discussions to Brazil to finally make a league. Like Premier League or MLS. But there are a lot of oppositions of big time presidents or the old presidents, the old mentality that are bickering on revenue, on TV revenue, or like the bickering, like, oh, the big teams, the more popular team getting more money. So I don't like that. But it's about professionalizing. It's what Rica Perrone. He's a really good sports journalist. Currently, Brazilian teams are fighting for getting pieces on a small cake. I think should be bigger cake for more sharing, even though the big teams are going to still get big pieces. But if you get a bigger cake, even a small piece can get bigger than today in terms
Yeah.
of
Well, what they need is a Roger Goodell. They need a central
commissioner.
Yeah. Because it just, but you gotta, as you said, you have to convince all those presidents to give up their traditional power, and that's always hard. But you have to find a way to get them to realize that the profits they currently are making could be doubled if they centralize and go international.
Because currently in a lot of teams structure is still like a country club, where members vote who's going to be the president. So there's a lot of politics. But I think it should be ownership. An owner has the best interest in the club, not for like his political side, but again, it's hard to convince this archaic uh, presidents, archaic members to change their mind, especially the infrastructure of Brazilian soccer with so much politics played, so much dependent on the CBF, the Brazilian Conference Federation, the states federations. It's going to be a long way to go, but just to see John Texter react the way he reacted this weekend was just glowing. It's just beautiful to see a guy from Missouri be enchanted by Botafogo fans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you got to get rid of that mentality, but it's so hard to get people to change their ways. But hopefully at some point they see the possibilities, and maybe an outsider like Texter can help them see that way.
Yeah, and of course, just to top it off in the Brazilian National League, the Brasileirão, one of the reasons that fans are happy with Texter is because Botafogo is undefeated in the especially in the last 5 games, 3 wins and 2 draws. Especially they beat Flamingo 2 weekends ago, so that's why they're right on high. They play on the road versus America Mineiro, so I think there's a big chance that Botafogo still be in the top four. The big game this weekend is Corinthians versus Sao Paulo. Corinthians is still in the first place, and Sao Paulo is in third place. So the winner of this game is going to sit in the top of the league this weekend. So it's going to be a big game.
Yeah, it's going to be. It sounds like an awesome competition. There's always some sort of competition going on, which also I think also could really make Brazilian soccer super exciting. It's stuff that like the NBA has been talking about, like doing an in-season tournament and stuff like that. But in Brazil, it's always like that. You always have some sort of tournament going on, which I think would also I think really bring the excitement to an American audience.
No, yeah, it's derbies. That's one of the excitement parts of the season is derbies because you have in the state and in the national tournament. So and Sao Paulo never beat Corinthians in Corinthians new stadium since 2014. They never beat. So maybe this will be the weekend. I don't know. We'll see about that. But let's go to hot takes.
Yeah, so my first hot take, and then this is really directed towards Titans fans, but really just fans of any team. Stop overreacting to rookie training camp videos. Like, you can't call someone a bust or, oh, this is a certified Hall of Famer or whatnot based off of a training camp video. Like, people were freaking out the other day about Traylon Burks kind of stepping up, kind of like tripping over some of those like training dummies. Um, it's you're just warming up your feet, right? Like you're gonna stumble sometimes. Um, all I care about when it comes to Traylon Burks, can he catch the football? And he can. I proved that in practice. He's proved that in his play. Malik Willis, he threw a pick six to Deion Jackson. Okay, made a mistake. Sometimes quarterbacks throw interceptions. You can't um, tell whether or not a player is going to be successful or not based off what they do in a preseason practice. Jamar Chase apparently last year was having severe drop issues, and he was going to be a big bust. And he only went on to have one of the greatest rookie seasons of all time. Yeah, you tell me. I don't think
I
that
mean,
fans should really be reading as much as they do into these preseason practices because at the end of the day, what you do in a practice way different than a game. I mean, apparently Jared Garantano was an incredible practice player, but he sucked when he got into the game.
no, I agree. I feel like, first of all, being a rookie in the NFL is not easy. You don't know if you're going to remain in the roster. You don't know what's going to be like. So you're already nervous enough in this prospect. So just give them a break. I know with the social media and the instant reaction era, everything we react. This in 20 years ago, nobody cared. Nobody cared. Probably if we watch Peyton Manning's rookie camp, the way we analyze today's rookie camp, we're gonna criticize Peyton Manning a lot. We would have criticized Tom. Imagine Tom Brady. He was the number 199 pick for the Patriots. Imagine how his rookie camp was.
Like, oh, this bum's getting cut probably. Would have been the reaction.
Yeah, but we can't all be. I know with social media right now, we want content and content, but we can all scrutinize and analyze this way. I feel like give them a chance to play. If they don't perform as well on the field on game day, that is one point. But again, I completely agree with you. Stop overreacting over rookie training camps.
Absolutely. Gus, do you have a hot take?
No, and I have a hot take as well for Flamingo fans to going back to what I said in my Brazilian section. Stop, stop dreaming about 2019. It was 1 year, one magical year, but you can't ask for another repeat. If you Because Flamengo fans are paralyzed in 2019. They It was such a hype that they expect that every time. And then if one minor thing doesn't go their way, they just overreact. Flamengo is running coach after coach after coach. Since Jorge Jesus left, Flamengo is in their fifth coach. They had Dominic, Rogério Ceni, Renato Gaúcho, and now Paulo Souza. So on their fourth head coach, and they wanna run. They want him out of town again because George Jesus, because the love and the God George Jesus wants to go back. Come on, give them a time. And also Flamengo players in 2019, they were already experienced veteran players. 3 years later, they got older. They are not the same. There was a pandemic. Maybe a lot of players were affected by it. So you can't ask for another season like that all the time. So you're gonna get just paralyzed, and you just turn your team into a machine that are always in crisis, no matter what they do.
Yeah, just I mean, just in general, you can't ever go back to the old days, like ever. It feels like because whatever caused the success of your team uh, in one particular year can't be replicated. I mean, that's really to anything. Like it's like with all these people who scream for like reunions of TV shows. Um, what worked in 1990 isn't going to work in 2022. Or getting a band back together. Like if Oasis got back together, for example, they're not going to make the same quality of music they made in the mid 90s. And the same thing goes for any sports teams, including a soccer team. The players and all the components that made uh, Flamingo really good in 2019, they're not going to probably be successful in 2022. This time
Yeah,
is gone.
and it's like of course the way he left was very bad, but uh, it's like if Doug Peterson left literally half in midway to the next season they won the Super Bowl. And then every time Doug Peterson gave an interview or went to Philly, it would be the talk because if only Doug Peterson come back, the Philadelphia Eagles will go back to the Super Bowl and win it again. It doesn't work that way. There's a lot of factors that made Philly a championship team. Doug Peterson was a part of it, but was not the crucial part of it.
Yeah, exactly. Are you gonna bring back Nick Foles? Is he gonna just magically show up and win you another Super Bowl? Eh, you know it's just you can't replicate things. No two championships are ever the same. No two seasons are ever the same. No two games are ever the same. I've watched thousands of football games, and none of them ever went exactly the same as the other. That's the beauty of sports. You never know what's going to happen game to game, play to play.
Yeah. And I understand the Flamingo fans because the hype they had in that season was such was like a meteor because in one weekend they won the Libertadores final in 2 goals in stoppage time. Literally the next day, with Palmeiras losing at home, they won the Brazilian National Championship. It's unheard of a team to win their two biggest titles in the same weekend. I know it was such a hype, but in, and enjoy the title. But you can't ask that to be repeated because again, it's like a meteor.
Exactly. It's just exactly. You can't repeat exactly. I mean, you can try to replicate at least some stuff. There's some stuff that you should try to carry over from year to year, but you always have to change parts because if you remain complacent, um, the time is going to move past you, and
And
that's just a lesson for all of our lives.
And Flamengo, since Jorge Jesus left, has been a decent team. They won the Brazilian National Championship in 2020. They went to the Libertadores final in 2021. So it's not like they went from championship to bust. They remain competitive. They won a big title. They went to the final. If it wasn't for Andreas Pereira making a blunder, they probably would have won that game. But it's just Flamengo fans are just really, really delusional, and the more delusional they get, the more alienated their coach and their players are gonna be.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta support who you have now to the best of your ability, and let them try to create their own magic.
Yeah, but we'll see what's gonna be in the Flamengo soap opera if Paulo Souza is gonna remain. I think he's gonna stay. I think he. But I give credit where credit is due. Flamengo's president Landim is not giving up pressure to the fans and the media. He's just Paulo Souza is our coach. He's not going anywhere. I'm not hiring Jorge Jesus. I'm not caving to his demands. Flamengo is bigger than him, but so I give credit to Rodolfo Landim, the Flamengo's president. He is not caving in until now.
Yeah, yeah, and that's something he needs to continue to do if he wants his club to be successful moving forward. Otherwise, why should anyone ever trust him if he's going to be swayed by public opinion?
Yeah, but that's it for our beloved podcast. I missed having this time with you, Nick. As always, big pleasure.
Yeah, definitely fun talking about American and Brazilian sports, especially right now, because there's so much going on here in late May with all the sports and I saw the playoffs going on in America. You're in the middle of soccer season down in Brazil, and we're only going to get busier throughout 2022 as we build up to the World Cup, build up to football season, finish the NBA and NHL. It's going to be an awesome run here. So for Gus Tomazeli down in Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil, let me go to my left. There we go. And from here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, United States, Nicholas Hill. Thank you for listening to episode 26 here of Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports, recorded on May 18th, 2022. Y'all stay safe out there, take care of one another, and make sure to treat everyone equally and never fall for any damaging rhetoric. Love it.